After a weekend attack by Hamas terrorists on Golani infantry soldiers of the IDF in the Rafah area in the Gaza Strip, the IDF dealt a blow that Hamas never dreamed of. And this is happening even as it is preempting a strike in the north that Hezbollah is preparing despite a commitment by the Lebanese Prime Minister to disarm the terrorist organization by the end of the year. We'll also bring you all the details on the lethal IDF strike in southern Lebanon that thwarted a Hamas infiltration attack into northern Israel. And elsewhere, on the northern front, a week after the unusual IDF operation in Syria, Golani sends a message to Israel. In regional news, the IDF had a sharp message over the weekend saying that the conflict with Iran isn't over and the job will be finished. American pressure is also being applied to Israel, and there is a concern that President Trump may announce a move to Stage B before the last remains of the hostage are returned. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and we're bringing you all the truth about what's happening in Israel. Following an attack over the weekend on Golani Brigade soldiers in Rafah, the IDF struck back hard and announced the elimination of the East Rafah battalion commander, his deputy, and a company commander in Hamas, following focused intelligence activities in the area of underground terror infrastructure in Rafah. However, despite the heavy damage to the organization since October 7th and the eliminations at the top, the terrorist organization is completing a new command echelon and reorganizing in the tunnels and deep inside the Gaza Strip. During the last Shabbat, Saturday, IDF forces eliminated several terrorists who approached the yellow line in the Gaza Strip, an indication that Hamas intends to continue putting the IDF to the test despite the ceasefire. TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us all the details on the Middle East's AI revolution, including Washington's grandiose plan for the Gaza Strip, the removal of Hamas, rebuilding as a smart city, development of infrastructure, a port, an airport, and joining the Abraham Accords, all with the aim of creating long-term stability and growth. The international body that will control the Gaza Strip will be announced by President Donald Trump by the end of the year, with a security force to be deployed throughout 2026. As part of the developments, a Palestinian committee will manage the Gaza Strip while the dispute over the Rafah crossing intensifies, and we will go into all the details. And today, we will reveal all the information on the secret meeting that was provided by sources familiar with the details. Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of Britain, is prompting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Arab states the entry of the Palestinian Authority to rule certain areas in the Gaza Strip. In Israel, the idea was not dismissed out of hand, but the Prime Minister's office asked not to comment at this moment. And in the north, Syrian interim president Abu Muhammad al-Golani went on the offensive over this weekend, warning that Israel's demand for a demilitarized zone puts Syria in a dangerous situation. And next door, in Lebanon, the IDF carried out a lethal strike to thwart Hamas's infiltration attempt into the Galilee just recently. This is the north of Israel. Reports emerged over the weekend that 14 terrorists were eliminated about 2 weeks ago in a strike on a Hamas training compound in the Sidon area, where preparations were on their way to carry out an attack from Lebanon into Israel. Military intelligence tracked the site for a long period of time, adding that there were means and also capabilities in that location to rehearse the infiltration. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam declared over the weekend in an interview with the Qatari channel El Arabi that his government intends to complete by the end of the year the disarmament south of the Litani River of Hezbollah, except for areas under Israeli control. However, Lebanese Foreign Minister Yosef Raji admitted in an interview with El Arabiya that Hezbollah cannot hand over its weapons without an Iranian decision, and that the organization is currently focusing on its rehabilitation, not on fighting Israel. And in related news, Hezbollah presented something new over the weekend, an unusual, threatening video towards Israel, and we'll call the Orchestra of Terror. Yes, you heard right. An AI-designed propaganda video is really something, and we'll bring you some more details about it. In other news, wanted terrorists were arrested and weapons were seized in a raid on an apartment building in Jerusalem. In regional developments, the commander of the IRGC Navy announced over the weekend that his forces are deploying a new missile with unprecedented range. I'm personally very skeptical about whether this new missile actually exists, but in any case, the United States issued a sharp message of its own saying that the battle against Iran is not over yet. However, the United States is not seeking to topple the Ayatollah regime in Iran. So we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto. With me today is Mati Shoshani, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, bringing you all the truth about what's happening in Israel amidst the ongoing battle against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we begin, I want to call on you to continue to spread the truth. It is very important that you press the share button, leave a comment, hit the like button, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, we're getting into the news because 792 days have passed since October 7th massacre of the Hamas terrorist organization against Israel, and in Gaza, the fallen abductee Staff Sergeant First Class Ran Guyali is still being held. Hamas is still in power in parts of the Gaza Strip beyond the yellow line, let alone in the underground tunnels. Although the terrorist organization has lost most of its military and political leadership in Gaza, together with more than 20,000 fighters, it is reorganizing, recruiting, and conducting a round of appointments. And over the weekend, there were several clashes between Hamas terrorists and the IDF. Hamas terrorists continued to provoke IDF soldiers during the ceasefire in order to ignite the arena. And after the serious incident in which 4 Golani reconnaissance brigade soldiers were wounded the day before yesterday in Rafah in the Gaza Strip, IDF forces acted to strike several Hamas targets. On Thursday evening, the IDF announced that it had succeeded in eliminating the East Rafah battalion commander, his deputy, and a company commander in the Hamas organization as they tried to escape the underground terrorist infrastructure. And also, Gaza Division forces and the Air Force eliminated 4 terrorists who emerged from an underground route in the area of the underground Hamas terrorist infrastructure in eastern Rafah. Speaking of which, after intelligence deciphering, it can now be confirmed that the following were eliminated. Muhammad Jawad Muhammad El-Bawab, the commander of the East Rafah battalion in Hamas, who managed the planning of the battalion's participation in the massacre of October 7, 2023. He continued to lead Hamas operations throughout this war, but he won't be doing that any longer. Eliminated alongside him was Ismail Kanan Abdel El Khai Abu Abda, the deputy commander of the East Rafah battalion, who also participated in the October 7th massacre, and Abdallah Ghazi Ahmed Hamad, the son of the senior Hamas official Ghazi, and a member of the East Rafah battalion commander squad. And the IDF says that as part of the activity since the ceasefire agreement began, the forces are encircling the area and destroying terrorist infrastructures above and below the ground with aerial assistance from the Air Force. So far, the IDF and the Israeli security authorities have eliminated more than 40 terrorists in the area of the underground terrorist infrastructure in eastern Rafah. However, Hamas also struck a blow over the weekend, taking out one of their most serious opponents in the Gaza Strip. I'm speaking about Yasser Abu Shabab, a militia leader in Rafah who opposed Hamas and operated in cooperation with Israel. Last Thursday, he lost his life in an exchange of fire with gunmen. It is not entirely clear who they were, with some reports saying that this was an internal clan rivalry, while others say that Hamas was behind it. In any case, Hamas seems to have had a plan to get rid of Abu Shabab, and now the next phase of their plan is going into effect. On Friday, a senior Hamas official announced that armed men from rival militias are being given a pardon of 10 days, during which they are required to turn themselves in to Hamas security arms. However, the popular forces Abu Shabab led do not appear to be in any big hurry to comply with this demand, as his deputy, Rasna el-Dahini, has been appointed to take his place, and the group has declared their intention to continue on the same path as before. The leader of another anti-Hamas militia in Rafah told the media portals that they are managing Rassan el-Dahini in the second in command there, and he knows the work, the people, and everything. Hamas constantly needs to create a mess and say that there are problems with us so that people will not join us. But people keep calling us and asking for help. In a more general sense, the organization opposing Hamas are conveying a message that they are here to stay in Gaza. However, on their own, they cannot truly constitute a governing alternative to the terrorist organization, which holds thousands of terrorists in the heart of the Gaza Strip. Furthermore, without IDF protection, it is very doubtful that they could survive Hamas attacks. In this context, even if a trained Palestinian Authority police force were allowed to enter the Gaza Strip, it is by no means certain that Hamas and the other terrorist organizations would raise a white flag. And with all of that having been said, Abu Shabab's death constitutes a severe blow to the move promoted by the Israeli security establishment, within which anti-Hamas militias are supposed to operate alongside Israel in parts of Stage 2 of the United States President Donald Trump's peace plan for the Gaza Strip. Abu Shabab was considered one of the key players in the southern Rafah sector, and maybe it still will be, but that remains to be seen what will happen next with his predecessor. It is also important to point out that since the ceasefire in October, Hamas has pursued a hard line against those that it defines as collaborators with Israel. The organization has eliminated and arrested several activists accused of coordination with Israel as part of strengthening its renewed rule in the areas that it still controls in the Gaza Strip. And here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this issue. And before we bring you all the information on what happened with the Hezbollah terrorist organization and how the IDF is dismantling the terrorist infrastructure south of the Litani River in Lebanon, we need to ask you to continue and spread the truth. We are at a stage where it's very hard for us to distribute our content, and we need your help so that this video will reach as many people as possible. So please make sure to hit the comment button, leave a comment, hit the like button, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And speaking of what is really happening in Israel, I want to speak to you for just a moment about one of our partners. The ceasefire between Israel and Iran has paused recent violence. However, a spiritual battle is still taking place, and today, nearly 99% of Israelis do not know who Jesus is, Yeshua. Think about that. Nearly 99% of Israelis do not know Jesus, Yeshua. However, a miracle is unfolding in our times. One for Israel ministry is sharing the gospel, and Jewish people are getting to know and accept Jesus in numbers not seen since the early church. Many Arab people and others are also finding faith and unity. One for Israel is an initiative of native-born Israelis, good personal friends of ours that are sharing the gospel, discipling believers, and equipping spiritual leaders all across Israel. As Romans 10 verse 9 expresses, "My heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they may be saved." Your support helps bring the gospel back to Israel. So I want to invite you to do something right now. You can pick up the phone and call 800-879-5530. That's 800-879-5530 to help share the gospel in Israel. You can also visit oneforisrael.org/pray or scan the QR code. Thank you. And now we are switching our focus to the northern arena, where events seem to be building up to an inevitable round of renewed hostilities between the IDF and the Shiite terrorist militia, Hezbollah. They are threatening Israel at high volume straight from the mountains north of Israel, and the IDF is taking their rhetorical threats very seriously. Alongside the stormy weather, on Saturday evening, the IDF spokesperson announced that at daybreak, the IDF will begin an exercise in the Har Dov, Mount Dov area in the northern parts of Israel. Thus, the IDF will significantly increase preparations in the area where Hezbollah is expected to try to challenge them, especially after the elimination of Hezbollah's chief of staff, Haytham Ali Tabtabi, about 3 weeks ago. There is an anticipation that under the cover of stormy winter and fog, Hezbollah terrorists will try to carry out an attack on the IDF troops with emphasis on the mountain sector. In related news, about 2 weeks after the unusual Air Force strike in the Tzidon area in southern Lebanon, it is now known that it thwarted preparations by a Hamas branch in the country to carry out an infiltration attack into the north. At the training facility that was bombed in the Ain el refugee camp, there were means and also capabilities to rehearse this attempted attack, and these intentions had been under military intelligence for a very long period. After the strike, the IDF confirmed that the Air Force attacked terrorists that are operating in a Hamas training compound at the site, and the statement added that the military compound that was struck served the terrorists of the organization for training and qualifications in order to plan and carry out terrorist outlines against the IDF forces and against the State of Israel. And according to the Lebanese Ministry of Health, the strike resulted in 14 fatalities, while 4 others were wounded, making it the deadliest Air Force strike in Lebanon since the ceasefire about a year ago. And according to IDF sources, military intelligence had been tracking the training compound for a very long time and waited for an opportunity in which dozens of junior terrorists would gather there in order to hit it. The IDF said that before the strike, steps were taken to reduce the chance of harming civilians, including the use of precision munitions, aerial observation, and additional intelligence. Tzidon, as noted, is in southern Lebanon, but north of the Litani River. And over the weekend, Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam promised in an interview with the Qatari channel El Arabi that the state will complete the process of disarmament south of the river by the end of the year, except in areas that are under Israeli control. According to him, concentrating the weapons in the remaining areas will be carried out during the next year. This takes place in the shadow of the direct meeting held last week by Israeli and the Lebanese officials in the town of Nakura, the first of its kind dealing with economic and also civilian issues. Salam said the negotiations have risen to a higher level than the military level. Israeli talk of economic cooperation with Lebanon is premature and will not happen except after peace. We are committed to the Arab Peace Initiative, to rehabilitating and reviving the economy of southern Lebanon, and to clearing the area south of the Litani out of weapons. In related news, Hezbollah published an unusually designed propaganda video over the weekend, this time using artificial intelligence, AI technology. The video, which was distributed on the organization's official channels, presented an orchestra performing the familiar background tone of Hezbollah propaganda videos, while interweaving images of the organization's operations that were engaged in preparations for launching missiles against Israel. In the video, a musical ensemble of trompeteers, clarinets, drummers, and other wind instruments played appears as if various venues, all graphically generated using advanced digital tools. The orchestra appears to play the iconic melody that has accompanied Hezbollah propaganda for years, and alongside it, terrorists are seen aiming launchers, loading shells, and launching rockets. The video ends with the slogan, "We were and will remain," a propaganda message intended to emphasize the organization's resilience despite the blows that it has recently been taken. The video is published just days after the elimination of Haytham Tabtabi, the organization's chief of staff in southern Lebanon, in a strike attributed to Israel. He is one of the highest-ranking figures that Hezbollah has lost since the escalation began in the north. And the organization's Secretary General, Naim Qassem, warned after Tabtabi's death that Hezbollah will not remain silent over the strike, adding, "The response will come at the appropriate time." Was this video the response that he was talking about? Let me know in the comments what you think about this Qassem and what he's talking about. In the meantime, the use of AI tools and advanced graphics in propaganda videos is another layer that Hezbollah's digital evolution is taking, which is trying to build a reinforced image that it's still in this game, even when the reality on the ground indicates something completely different. The music and visuals are intended to create a sense of pride, unity, and perseverance amongst the organization's supporters, and to broadcast a message of continuity despite the losses. Personally, I found the video entertaining. I actually kind of liked the music and even hummed to the melody as I was driving to work this morning. But I'm not intimidated by it because I've been to Lebanon and I've seen the truth about the situation there, which Hezbollah is trying to mask with videos like this one. And knowing the truth has set me free from the fear. I know that God is on our side, so that's why I can still smile and be happy, especially now after 2 years of war. We are still here, stronger than ever. Another person who knows the truth in the Lebanese foreign ministry is Yosef Raji, who gave an interview to the Saudi-owned El Arabiya media portal over the weekend, in which he exposed the complex reality behind the efforts to disarm Hezbollah. He admitted in the interview that Hezbollah cannot hand over its weapons without an Iranian decision. According to him, the organization is currently buying time and preserving itself internally in order to restore its rule. This admission comes despite the statements by Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, and Raji himself declaring over and over again in recent months that the state is committed to dismantling the terrorist organization. It also underscores Hezbollah's absolute dependence on Tehran and explains why all Lebanese efforts have not so far produced tangible results. Raji went on to say in the interview that Hezbollah is rebuilding itself in many ways, including through money, as has come from the mouths of its leaders, so that it can restore its rule internally in the moment that it is given the opportunity. Hezbollah's work now is no longer focused on the south and on fighting Israel, but on strengthening its internal standing inside Lebanon. This is a significant change in the organizational strategy, indicating that Hezbollah is withdrawing from direct confrontation with Israel in favor of focusing on restoring its political and military power in the Lebanese arena. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the most detailed information every single day about what's happening in Israel and in the Middle East, and we invite you to continue and spread the truth. Share our videos on YouTube, follow us on social media, and most importantly, do not forget to click on the subscribe button so that you stay aligned with the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is caught between a rock and a hard place, and the Americans have decided to press even harder. While the last hostage in Gaza has not yet been released, the remains of him, the United States is pressuring Israel to move to stage B of this arrangement. But in Israel, there is concern about moving forward without his return, which places Netanyahu at a complicated crossroads, especially now that the new rulers in Gaza are being revealed. The international body that will control the Gaza Strip will be announced by the United States President Donald Trump by the end of the year, with a security force to be deployed throughout 2026. As part of the developments, a Palestinian committee will manage Gaza, while the dispute over the Rafah area, the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, is still intensifying. And what is the entire Middle East AI revolution plan, including the grandiose American plan for the Gaza Strip that means the removal of Hamas, rebuilding it as a smart city, development of infrastructure, a port, an airport, and joining the Abraham Accords, all with the goal of creating long-term stability and growth? How does this whole move fit together, and how will it be implemented? So Mati, please help us understand what's going on.
That's right, the details for the U.S. plan to rebuild the Gaza Strip, Phase 2, what it includes, and how it looks like have been leaked over this weekend in great detail, and it's going to blow your mind. We're talking about artificial intelligence, about skyscrapers, about train systems, about cash in the hand of Gaza's people, and many, many more details that have come out. This is all part of a 38-page plan or prospectus that has been leaked from within the U.S. government to show what the US has been planning for months for the day after for the Gaza Strip. Over the next minutes, I'm going to break down everything that's been taking place because this is dramatic, it's interesting, and it gives us insight into the mind of President Donald Trump and the people working around him in the White House, in the United States, as to how they're planning to build the next phase in the Gaza Strip. So let's start with the headlines. The main headline is that the full details of a plan that was initially leaked back in the end of the summer, around August, to rebuild the Gaza Strip have been leaked. And that document is about a 38-page document that has images, many of them of course are architectural renders, of what the Gaza Strip is supposed to look like in the day after the war is over. What does that mean? This is what phase 2 would look like after Hamas is removed, after the peace bill of Gaza are rebuilt, and after an international force is brought in. The images out of that plan are truly mind-blowing. We have artificial intelligence centers. We have skyscrapers throughout the city. We have a guarantee of building train systems within the city, possibly train systems from around the Arab world that will end up in the Gaza Strip, a port that will be built there, and the list goes on and on and on, and even ends with cash in the hands of every Gaza civilian. $5,000, in fact, for every person. Now, what's interesting about this is really understanding the big picture of where the United States is trying to go with everything that's happening in the Gaza Strip. Let me remind you, we're at phase 1. Phase 1 was exchanging the hostages, both living and murdered, out of the Gaza Strip. Israel, in turn, releasing thousands of Palestinian, in several installments, of Palestinian Gazan terrorists that were held within Israeli prisons back to the Gaza Strip, and withdrawing initially to the Yellow Line, which we've already done, and secondly, withdrawing completely out of the Gaza Strip. But phase 2 is what we're talking about right now. Phase 2 is setting up an international force that's going to build itself up in the Gaza Strip and replace the Hamas terrorist government as a legitimate government of the Gaza Strip. There are many names to this force, but the big name, the big buzzword is the ISF, the International Stabilization Force. And for many months now, we've been waiting to hear who the United States is going to say that ISF force is going to be, because there's a lot of logistical support already in place. There's humanitarian aid already been built up. There are many companies that are willing to move in the goods, but someone who's not Israel and not the United States needs to be willing to have boots on the ground, a force to first police the Gaza Strip and then ultimately replace the Hamas government as the governing body of the Gaza Strip, taking care of both military, of civil practices, and of course of keeping the peace on the ground in the Gaza Strip. And that is a tall order. Now the US government has set up a deadline exactly for that, saying that they wanted to do this, well, it was months ago, by the beginning of 2026. So again, it's December, and they're saying they want to have someone on the ground in the beginning, that is January, maybe February of 2026. Now let me remind you, multiple countries have already suggested they would be part of the force to rebuild the Gaza Strip. Azerbaijan was one of them, Indonesia was another, but of course also the Turks want to be part of the forces or the boots on the ground inside the Gaza Strip. But bringing in a force into an area of war takes months in logistical preparation. It's not something that happens overnight, definitely not in a scenario as complex as this is, working between Israeli forces on the ground, Israeli logistics, and of course building up inside the Gaza Strip, which has been, for years now, war-torn and destroyed by Hamas and then by Israeli military operations in it. So this is a very tall order, very complex story, but it gives you an understanding into what's really happening in the minds of the US government as to what they're hoping, expecting, believing will take place in the Gaza Strip. So let's start breaking down the pieces in this entire story. The first one is we get a glimpse into the mind of President Trump and the team around him. We get to see what they're really planning to do with the Gaza Strip. I say this because many months ago, close to a year ago, President Trump, along with several others, started talking about this grand idea of building this French Riviera, or the Riviera of the Middle East, in the Gaza Strip. The Singapore, possibly, of the Middle East, an area that would have trade, would have trains and infrastructure, that would have ports, that would have everything that would support a really flourishing kind of city. That was sort of the rosy, optimistic image that was presented in front of everyone as to what the Gaza Strip is supposed to look like in the day after. And back then, this is going back almost a year now, Back then, many people mocked this idea. They said it was absurd. They made memes about it. They were joking about President Trump and his crazy ideas. That's them saying, not me, by the way, of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. They joked about the idea of having a Trump Tower or Trump Hotel in the Gaza Strip. But now we see, with this 38-page document, that this wasn't a joke. President Trump was serious, and his team put together a document detailing, to great detail, what they're actually planning to do to rebuild the Gaza Strip. The problem is, we're stuck in the transition period between phase 1, which I mentioned is exchanging hostages and withdrawing the IDF in a real ceasefire, and phase 2, which is rebuilding the Gaza Strip with someone on the ground who isn't Hamas. And that's really the tricky part. There's one more big thing in the mix here, which is that we're not really done with phase 1. Because phase 1 was supposed to end with Hamas being essentially disarmed, giving in to the ceasefire agreement, the IDF being able to withdraw fully, and all hostages being brought back to Israel. But right now, that's not the case. We don't have all the hostages. There remains one murdered hostage that's held by Hamas, and they're not showing any signs of planning to release him. They're claiming they can't find the body, but again, with them, it's very hard to know what's true and what's not. But there's another bigger elephant in the room, which is the fact that Hamas has been consistently, daily violating the ceasefire agreement. They've multiple times ambushed IDF soldiers that are within the agreed upon lines of withdrawal of the IDF, and they on a daily basis try to sabotage the operations of the IDF and humanitarian aid efforts in the Gaza Strip. So we can't really move forward without someone else putting the squeeze on the ground on Hamas forces and allowing the IDF forces to withdraw. And here it gets really tricky, because this requires someone else, not the US, not Israel, to be the entity on the ground who does exactly that. Now, we talked about Azerbaijan, we talked about Indonesia, but both of them have been hesitant to really deploy their forces. We're not entirely sure why. One country has really wanted to deploy their forces against the desire of the Israeli government, and that is, of course, Turkey. Turkey has been a pivotal point of this entire process. They are the ones who wanted to be part of the negotiation and were indeed instrumental in bringing forth a ceasefire agreement here in the Middle East. But, and this is a really big but, Turkey is on a good day at least, a frenemy of the state of Israel. They do many, many things that are opposed to the state of Israel, including very hateful, very violent, very acidic rhetoric against our country, our leaders, including open threats against our country, and including, of course, operations within our northern neighbors, Syria and Lebanon, that would ultimately, if allowed to move forward without check, would jeopardize the safety of Israel. So Israel has understandably, clearly, and with a very obvious reason, said absolutely no Turkish forces on the ground within the Gaza Strip. That is not an option, and we're not willing to see that happen. And so we're stuck in this intermediate period where the US is planning these grand plans of building up the Gaza Strip, of doing something amazing, unique, special, that will be sort of a beacon to other nations of what can happen when you rebuild after war. But at the same time, we're missing that crucial piece. The piece, the entity, the boots on the ground to remove Hamas from control of the Gaza Strip. And while that persists, while that problem remains on the table, we simply cannot move forward. We're stuck in this interim period where these grand ideas of rebuilding just don't seem to materialize because of who our partners on the ground are. Now, I don't want to sound discouraging and I don't want to sound pessimistic. There's been a lot of work that's been done on the ground already. We have in Kiryat Gat in southern Israel an enormous logistical facility that has been operated by the US government, along with multiple other governments, including several governments that don't want to be mentioned, that are still operating behind the scenes. And they're ramping up, they're building up the logistics, the humanitarian efforts, the manpower, and the security forces needed to physically rebuild the Gaza Strip in the day after. But we're still missing that crucial piece, the piece that will be on the ground, armed and weaponized and willing to fight against Hamas. Now, we're not needing them to fight a war. Israel's already done that. We need them to keep the peace and keep Hamas at bay so the Gaza Strip can be rebuilt. Now, there's a greater regional piece that's at play here, which has to do with the US trying to rebuild, restabilize, and restructure the power balance in this entire region. This includes, of course, Lebanon, includes Syria, includes, of course, the Gaza Strip first and foremost. And if this materializes, it will really put in place a very significant influence to the American government, or for the American government in this region, and show everyone in this region, first and foremost the Iranians, that the US is able to rebuild and not just partake in war. And this is key, because that part, the stabilizing Gaza, stabilizing Lebanon, stabilizing Syria, that is what opens up the door for Abraham Accords 2.0, for the Saudis to see that now it's a stable region, for the Iranians to see that their agenda has been pushed back, and to, in a very practical way, rebuild without the effect of the Muslim Brotherhood or the radical government of the Islamic jihadist government of the Iranian people here in this region. We've seen a lot of disruption for decades now in this region. Now is a time to rebuild. And for that to happen, we need to have this kind of plan, the 38-page Trump plan to rebuild the Gaza Strip. We need that type of optimism. We need that type of hopefulness in this region. We need the people that can dream big and think outside of the box and pull together all the nations that are required to do that. And for that to happen, there's a whole lot of work ahead of us. There's a requirement on the US government to really bring in whatever force that is that will have the boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip. We need the US and the Israeli government to work hand in hand, day in and day out, to make sure the ceasefire, which is a very fragile ceasefire, doesn't blow up in our face, both literally and figuratively speaking. And of course, we need the regional play. We need the Turks, we need the Qataris, we need the Americans, we need the Lebanese government, we need the Syrian leadership, all to work together, all to work towards this goal of stabilizing and pushing back Iranian interests. And then, and only then, do we get to enter into phase 2.0, which is rebuilding the Gaza Strip and bringing to life this incredible, this hopeful, this optimistic plan of doing something better, virtuous, good, positive in the Gaza Strip, and no more war, no more fighting. And that is something worth fighting for in my mind. That is something worth praying for. That is something worth striving for. And I have no doubt that if even half of this takes place, we could be looking at a transformed Middle East. That's it for now. There's a whole lot to say about this topic, but in honesty, we really need to continue praying and having hope, both in God's faithfulness, but also in the ability of our leaders to stand true to what is right in this region. Not just for a day or a month, but it's several years ahead, because that's how long it's going to take to rebuild the Middle East. Now back to Yair Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati Shoshani, for bringing your usual clarity to these vitally important issues. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this matter, so keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you stay aligned to what's happening in Israel and know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And now we're switching our focus to regional affairs. Iran declared over the weekend that the rehabilitation of its missile array continues, including announcements that they now have ballistic missiles with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. This announcement was accompanied by another declaration that these missiles are sufficient for deterrence purposes, and they also cover the territory of Israel. The United States and its allies have called on Tehran to limit missile development to a range that is under 500 kilometers, a demand that Iran has repeatedly rejected. The news portal Iran International reported on Saturday that Ali Razai Tangasiri, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards Navy, said in an interview with state television that the Persian Gulf is 1,375 kilometers long. The range of our new missiles exceeds that. He added that the weapon built by the Revolutionary Guards Navy is entirely domestic and can be guided after its launch. His remarks were made during the execution of the second phase of a naval drill that began on Thursday with the firing of ballistic and cruise missiles at targets in the Arabian Sea. State media reported that the drill also included the operation of UAVs and air defensive maneuvers around the Strait of Hormuz, the Iran's southern islands. Tangasiri stated that all the weapons used in the drill were domestically produced, including a new ballistic missile with very high accuracy, according to him. Our enemies have seen its accuracy. I suppose that Israel is one of the enemies of the Iranian regime, but I haven't seen any of these things that he's talking about, and I wonder if anyone else has either. Let me know in the comment section if you saw any of this stuff. In any event, the United States Special Envoy for Syria, Tom Barak, declared in an extensive interview that was published on the website of the news portal, The National, on Friday, that Washington is not seeking to topple the governing regime in Iran, and called on Tehran to renew talks on its nuclear program. He went on to say, My bosses, President Trump and Secretary of State Rubio, are not engaged in regime change. They are engaged in a regional solution that remains for the region itself. The issue was Israel. What President Trump stepped in to do at the end of that 12-day war was historic. It was amazing. Barak also criticized the regime change policy that was previously practiced in this region, claiming that since 1946, there have been 93 regime changes and coups, none of which succeeded, including 2 in Iran. He said, when they attribute to President Trump regime change, we already had 2 regime changes in Iran. None worked, so I think wisely it should be left for the region to solve. Why hasn't Israel finished the job? We are still not at the end. This is chapter 5, and we have 5 more chapters to go. With that in mind, it's important to remember that President Trump set 3 conditions that Iran must meet before starting negotiations with Washington, including zero uranium enrichment, cessation of support for Tehran's armed allies in this region, and restrictions on its missile program. Tehran sees these conditions as an impossible starting point for any kind of negotiations. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this issue, so keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth from Israel, boots on the ground style. And now, we move on to reports inside Israel, where extremist Islamic terrorist organizations that are affiliated with Hamas are trying with all their might to carry out attacks against Israeli civilians. Jerusalem Border Police, Mistaravim, undercover forces and IDF soldiers from the Binyamin Brigade operated on Thursday under the Israeli Security Authority intelligence direction in the village of Akab to arrest 2 wanted suspects involved in terrorist activities. During a search conducted by the forces at the site, the soldiers located weapons and other contraband, and 2 suspects who were arrested were transferred for further interrogation by the Israeli security authorities. Additionally, a terrorist attempted a vehicular ramming attack towards a foot patrol at Police Square in Hebron on Saturday evening. And IDF soldiers deployed at the site returned far and succeeded in eliminating the terrorist. 1 soldier was lightly wounded. In a statement by the IDF spokesperson, it was written, a short time ago, 2 terrorists accelerated their vehicle towards forces of the paratroopers brigade who were in operational activity at the police checkpoint in the Judea Brigade. The forces opened fire at the terrorists and terminated them. Later, the IDF issued a clarification that from a report received afterwards, it appears that a hit on an uninvolved person at the scene was identified in addition to the elimination of the terrorist. This is the 2nd attempted attack in the area in less than a week, as last Monday a female soldier was lightly wounded after a terrorist driving a vehicle accelerated and hit her, causing injuries that required her to be hospitalized. Other soldiers deployed at the site returned fire towards the terrorist. A hit was identified and a chase after him began. And after several hours, the terrorist was located and terminated in his vehicle by the 202nd Paratroopers Battalion of the IDF after he tried to run over soldiers who were conducting the manhunt of him. In a severe attack at the Gush Junction, not far from Hebron, less than a month ago, Aaron Cohen was murdered and 3 other people were wounded. There too, it was a combined attack in which, after the ramming, the terrorists exited their vehicle armed with knives. A senior official in the defense establishment gave a statement to the media over the weekend in which he said Judea and Samaria is the area that worries us most. We are not strong enough there in intelligence. We will yet encounter the weapons that infiltrated that location during this war. We must prepare for a 7th of October scenario in Judea and Samaria, which can erupt at any moment. And I would like to take a personal request for you to pray into this issue, as the house where I live in, my children sleep in every night, is just a short walking distance from these areas where the official was speaking about. Hundreds of thousands of other Israelis live in this danger zone as well. So please, Pray for our safety and for our protection, and for the IDF soldiers' protection. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report every day on the whole truth, and we ask you to share it with as many people as possible. Please, best thing that you can do is to pray, because this is a spiritual war. We serve an amazing God. He has all the answers. So let's pray for some wisdom to our leaders, to your leaders, to the leaders of the people involved in this region. Let's pray for the defense of the IDF soldiers. Let's pray for our enemies. Let's pray for the people of Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, the Gaza Strip, the Iranian people, to have better leadership, to stop hating Israel, to start loving on the Jewish people. God can make that happen. Let's pray for that reason. Let's keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.